Sidrah 17, Yitro, Jethro. Covers 18 verse 1 to 20 verse 23. Jethro proclaims the God of Israel. He confesses the God of Israel. And remember, Jethro is the father-in-law of Moses. He advises Moses about leading the people of Israel, the children of Israel. They camp at Mount Sinai. There's smoke on the mountain, and God delivers the 10 Commandments to the people. Now, in this Sidrah, I want us to look at this idea of sacred sites, which are so interesting to us. We go visiting these sacred sites, whether it's a cathedral or wherever it might be. I want us to think a little bit about sacred sites, and it's relevant to this Sidrah. In chapter 19 and verse 12, it says this. This is the Lord speaking. You shall set boundaries for the people round about, saying, beware of ascending the mountain or touching its edge, for whoever touches the mountain shall surely die. So you mustn't touch the mountain. You mustn't be too near the mountain. And that includes animals as well. I guess it included birds as well. Because the mountain is holy. Wow. Mount Sinai, holy. Of course it's holy. We understand that. And it's death to touch it. Now the next verse says this, and this is the interesting part. A hand shall not touch it, for he shall surely be stoned or thrown down. Whether animal or person, he shall not live. Upon an extended blast of the shofar, the trumpet, they may ascend the mountain. So, upon an extended blast, a long blast from the trumpet, the shofar, it's the all clear. You know, we had the all clear in London. They had it when London was being bombed, and when the bombers had departed, you had this long siren sounding out, and it was called the all clear, and people could come out from the underground, come out from their shelters. The trouble had gone. It's not the best of illustrations, but this shofar was an all clear to the people, that the danger had passed, that the holiness, the awesome holiness of God had departed from the mountain. Do you see what's going on here? And now they can touch the mountain. What's going on here is it's the presence of God that sanctifies the mountain. And when the presence of God departs, the mountain reverts to mundane, to ordinary. It's just another mountain. Once the input, if you like, ceases, the holiness is not sustained. It departs. It departs. Now it's interesting because this is very much a view of Judaism in general, that it's the presence of God in the people. It's the presence of God that is the important issue. And of course this is inherited by Christians. We understand that it's not in things, but it's in people. That God came to dwell not in the church building down the road, the place with the steeple or with the tower, or even a modern building where the church meets, because the church is the people, because God came to live in people. It's the presence of God that sanctifies, and God doesn't live in buildings. So, this is something I want to just spend a few minutes thinking about, holy places. And I'm going to call this the missing link, by the way, probably, if Mark's in agreement with that, the missing link. And I'll explain why I'm going to call it that. Now, at the foot of Mount Sinai, you can see a Christian monastery. You can see a Muslim shrine, but you can't see any Jewish shrine. And again, the reason is because now that God has departed from the mountain, the Jews are not, as it were, interested in it. It's the presence of God that interests them. It's the presence of God which compels them and inspires them, and so they don't build a shrine there. Interesting thought. Now I'm going to bring in a story of Jesus. Do you remember the story of the impotent man, the man who was paralysed for 38 years, and he was sitting by the pool in Bethesda? Legend has it, and the people believed it, that every now and then an angel from God disturbed the surface of the water, and when he disturbed the surface of the water, the first person to get into the water was healed of their sickness. Well, if the legend was there, probably these things had happened, but we don't know for certain. That's not the important thing. This is the important thing. This impotent man, this paralysed man, was in a holy place. In came Jesus one day, and he saw the paralysed man, and he said, he knew he'd been there for 38 years, or he'd been sick for 38 years. Whether he'd been there for 38 years, don't know. And Jesus said to him, do you want to be made well? Remember, Jesus always asks people, he's a gentleman, he always asks them, do you want to be made well? Because he might not have wanted to be. And the man said, he didn't say yes or no, he just said, the problem is, he said, when the angel comes down and moves on the water, he says, I can't get down there to get into the water, and there's no one to carry me down there. So it's a funny story, really, because you think to yourself, what was he doing there in the first place? If he's never going to get down to the water anyway, what's he doing? What's he wasting his time for? But of course, I suppose, in all fairness, being a sick man, there was some sort of fellowship to be with other sick people. And anyway, it was a nice place to be. This beautiful five-arched, beautiful fountain of water, if you like, in this place, and lovely in Jerusalem in the shade there. It was a lovely place to be. Even better when Jesus came in. Now, the end of the story, of course, is Jesus says, take up your pallet, take up your bed and walk, and he was healed instantly there and then. Now, this is the point. The man was in a holy place, but something more holy came into that place, and it was Jesus. And he saw Jesus, and it was Jesus who healed him. Wouldn't it have been an awful thing if he was so enamoured of the holy place, so lost about the holy place, so consumed with the idea of the holy place that he missed Jesus, that he didn't just turn to the right there and look up and there was Jesus? If he didn't do that because he was watching the water, what an awful thing that would be. And that gives us an idea of holy places. Should we go to holy places? What does the Bible teach about holy places? I would say this. Visit a holy place. Visit Canterbury Cathedral, and stand there at the pavement where Thomas à Becket gave his life for his faith. Go to other places. Go to castles where there is you have these little gaps in the stonework where you look in, and the king used to look through this gap, and he would see the Eucharist being celebrated, the bread and wine being the bread being broken and the wine and the celebration. He would see that through. And when you stand in those places and you think of the King of England looking through there and seeing that because he had faith in God, it's actually quite thrilling. It's quite awe-inspiring. Is this wrong? Of course not. But you know what? There is nothing holy about that place. The holiness came with me, came with you. If you ever stand in a place and you sense the holiness of God, you can even go to the empty tomb, the tomb of Jesus in Jerusalem. We don't know if it was definitely his tomb, but it probably was. And there's this place where you can go in, you can visit there, and it's empty, of course. Jesus was raised. You remember the story. You know, the disciples came looking, and the two angels were in there. And they said to them, what are you doing? What have you come here for? Why do you seek the living among the dead? He's not here. He's risen. Come in and see. And they went in and they saw the burial clothes and everything. That's all they saw. There was no Jesus there. And you can go to that tomb to this day, if it's the right tomb. You can visit the Church of the Nativity. You could go there and think about the wonder, have the awe and sense of glory and mystery, to be in the place where Jesus was born. Well, that's a wonderful thing. And I wouldn't say don't go there, let's go there. But always know this, that it's the holiness of God's presence in the heart that is more holy than any place. And I would say also to a non-Christian, to an unbeliever watching this, very importantly, please listen carefully. If you have ever been anywhere and you've sensed a presence, if you like, a holy presence, the presence of God, and you've tried to explain it to people, maybe you can't put it into words, but you've sensed it. It may have been when you were outside. You may have been looking up at the stars. I know people have done that, and they've had a sense of awe and wonder. Others have been elsewhere, on mountains maybe, or just anywhere, wherever, can be anywhere. If ever you've sensed that, know this, be encouraged, because it's the beginnings of the stirring of faith in your heart. It's God actually inviting you to take advantage of that faith which is in your heart. And if you can sense God somewhere, if I may say so, it's not really that God is there. It's that God is speaking to your heart. And it's your faith which is seeing God. It's your faith which is sensing God. Do you see? I hope that that's clear. You see, this is where the missing link thing comes in. God is looking for links between heaven and earth. And the link is people, not buildings. We don't need that building down the road to become a link between heaven and earth. That's not God's home, God's house. You know, they used to call it God's house. That's not God's house. There's God's house. I carry God's house about with me. The presence of God I carry about with me, although that wouldn't be right to say that. He carries me actually around with him. He accompanies me. And when you become a believer, the Holy Spirit accompanies you wherever you go. And you begin to recognize God in all sorts of places and in people. You begin to see God in the mountains and on the hills and in human beings and in all sorts. And even when you visit a hospital. Yes, and even a hospital, even a funeral. I've been to funerals, I've taken funerals, and I can tell you that the presence of God is quite amazing. But I know that it's not this chapel where other things happen sometimes, where people who don't even believe in God, don't even believe in Jesus, they celebrate their things. Well, that's okay, that's up to them, you know. But I know that when I enter these places, and I go to all kinds of places, I can sense God. And it's because I'm carrying him about in my heart. It's not that he's there, he's there. And I would invite all unbelievers who are listening to this, if you want more of this, you want to sense God in more places, then I say to you, become a home of God. Become a dwelling place of God in the Spirit. Jesus said, if you love me, I and my Father and the Spirit will come to make our home in you. And you can become a holy place. Hallelujah.